Good morning and welcome to the State of the Industry Plenary. This morning's plenary is a partnership between the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association and the 2012 Fuel Cell Seminar and Energy Exposition. Please welcome President and Executive Director of the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association in Washington, D.C., Maury Markowitz.
Good morning, everyone. Can we hear some attention here? Good morning, everyone. Great. This is the last session, plenary session for this terrific conference. And before we get going with our terrific panel, I thought it would be a great time to thank Shannon Dana and her wonderful staff, and also the board of directors, some of them who are up here today, of the Fuel Cell Seminar, and I think they deserve some applause for putting a terrific program together. We have a terrific session in store for you, and so to get right to it, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Mike Hicks. Mike is the chair of the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association. He is the treasurer of the Fuel Cell Seminar, and that's what he does just to volunteer. His full-time job is with IDATEC, and he is a terrific person who's going to give you a long-time perspective as to the state of our industry. Mike has been around for many, many years, and I think you'll find his perspective of the industry to be very educational to many of you. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Hicks.
Please welcome Chairman of the Board of the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association and the Treasurer of the Board of the Fuel Cell Seminar and Energy Exposition, Mike Hicks.
Thank you, Maury, for those kind words, and it's once again, it's an honor to be here today. I'd also like to thank Shannon Baxter Clemens and the organizers of the 2012 Fuel Cell Seminar for allowing me to express my view on the state of the energy industry. It truly is a privilege to be here today. I invite you to join me for some observations about where we have been and where we are going. Overall, I'm excited about the industry, our commercial prospects, and about our role in the worldwide transition from a carbon-based energy to a carbon-free energy. And I hope you are too. But success is not guaranteed. We have a bright future, but we need to fight for it. The good news is that in 2012, we developed tools that we will need to win this fight. Our industry continues to make dramatic progress in the marketplace. We no longer are talking about potential. Worldwide fuel cell shipments have more than tripled since 2008 and are expected to triple again in 2012. We now have over 300 megawatts installed worldwide for fuel cell power. An estimated 4,000 forklifts are deployed or in demonstrations in the U.S. and in Europe. It's often overlooked, but this technology consumes an estimated 8 metric tons of hydrogen daily without incident, fueled or refueled by men and women who are not wearing moon suits and who are not engineers. These are everyday people doing this job without incident. The auto industry has reaffirmed its commitment to launching vehicles within the next 2 to 4 years. We're looking forward to a marketplace of essentially 50,000 vehicles in California alone by 2018. And in the transportation sector as well, buses are proving their worth in revenue-generated routes on 4 continents. Everywhere you look, fuel cells are making inroads. Tens of thousands of units, residential units are deployed in Japan, multi-megawatt utility installations in Korea. Small systems for telecommunications have been deployed in Africa, Latin America, and Indonesia. Combined heat and power in the United States. Special products for peacekeeping and unmanned vehicles. And then we also have demonstrations in exciting new markets such as aviation, ports, and airports. It's no wonder that venture capital has more than tripled, in the last 2 years. In 2011, over 1,000 new patents were filed in the fuel cell industry. We have made inroads to expanding the list of niche markets and are knocking on the door to many others. And we are beginning to see with us an exceptional list of attributes that society wants and needs in our mix of energy of the future. And here's what we have to offer. We are the cleanest fuel-consuming energy technology. We offer a unique combination of environmental, energy security, and customer benefits. We are an enabling technology for wind and solar power. We actually deliver on the promise of clean coal at affordable pricing. And we are an ideal partner with the domestic natural gas for the automotive and power generation markets. In short, we have a great story to tell, a family of technologies beginning to prove their commercial worth and societal potential. But for a variety of reasons, a year ago, no one was listening, or no one was listening to our story. A year ago, we were like the new kid in high school. Our mates in government, the policy community, and in the energy industry knew us only superficially or not at all. It did not help that we were shy and like most adolescents, immature. Worst, the coolest kid in town, the Department of Energy, was making fun of us on the playground. The good news is that this is not a problem of fundamentals. We just need to get the word out and do so in a context that's relevant to potential customers, collaborators, and policymakers. It's what those in marketing call rebranding. This is a job the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association has embraced on behalf of its members and the industry. The organization has priorities to remarket the image of fuel cells and hydrogen energy as a real exciting and transformational technology that delivers competent products and social benefits. To strengthen and rebuild where necessary our relationships with the federal government and the U.S. Congress. To reach out to states in support of the kind of strong state initiatives that have made such a difference in power generation in those markets. To seek new partnerships with industries and interest groups that are allies or ought to be allies. The utilities, the natural gas, the renewable energy industries, environmental and energy efficiency advocates, and policy leaders. I am very happy to report solid progress on all fronts. But I say progress, not success, because we still have a long way to go before we are comfortably occupy a seat among the advanced energy technologies. So what progress have we made with the administration? With the help of FCS&EE, U.S. Energy Secretary Chu met with the auto industry to talk about fuel cells. Afterwards, Dr. Chu said publicly, quote, "My thinking has matured on fuel cells, and now he supports them as an integral part or equal partner for advanced and renewable energy. He seems particularly interested in the combination of fuel cells and natural gas." As a follow-up, FCS&EE and our counterpart automotive trade associations are facilitating talks with the administration on a more formal auto industry government commitment along the lines of those seen in Japan and Europe, and Germany in particular. We have also met with high-level officials at the Office of Management and Budget, Federal Energy Regulation Commissions, and other agencies where we have found openness, if not always support. In a more practical vein, the new corporate average fuel economy standards give extra credit to fuel cells. In the U.S. Congress, we've also made progress. The budget for fuel cell research was increased in 2012, and we have hopes that in 2013 we'll be able to increase it again. FCS&EE has helped revitalize the House and the Senate caucuses, which provide a support mechanism to get the congressional vote, to get the congressional motivation out there. In our briefings for the congressional staff, we're standing room only on the Hill. Excuse me. This work culminated in the introduction of legislation that embodies the industry's highest policy priorities. Thanks to Connecticut Congressman John Larson and Senator Earl Blumenauer for their leadership on this and their untiring attention to our needs. Thanks also to New York Congressmen Tonko and Gibson for their leadership on tax credits. And at the state level, our FCH&E has supported policy proposals in states where our intervention seemed to make sense, and our support for fuel cells in these states is as strong as ever. In California, where the first U.S. market for fuel cell vehicles will be, the new ZEV regulations have increased incentives for fuel cell vehicles. And California's plan anticipates that fuel cell vehicles will be 2/3 of their fleet by 2050. California's Energy Commission has spent or committed $48 million so far towards infrastructure. And on the power generation side, California's self-generation initiative has led to over 40 megawatts of installed power in California alone. In all, at least 17 states have enacted fuel cell-friendly policies in 2010. And lastly, FCH&E has begun networking with a long list of trade association and powerful energy policy advocates who can help keep the focus on fuel cells as equals in the energy policy dialogue. This helps us amplify our policy message and also helps educate coal, natural gas, wind, and solar power advocates on the enabling nature of fuel cell technology. All this is admirable, especially given the small staff and resources that we have, and most of our efforts remain in the hands of volunteers. But we will need to do much more in 2013 if we are to consolidate this new visibility and turn it to our advantage. Expanding beyond niche markets will not be easy. Fuel cells do not yet compete on price with gasoline engines, natural gas turbines, and other technologies that have been entrenched in their industries for more than a century. We will need help. And that is where the government comes in. Government invests in a wide range of energy technologies that is understandable given the importance of energy to affordable economic well-being. It is our job to make sure fuel cells and hydrogen have an equal share in the government's economic research support and purchasing interest. We are advocates for a strong fuel cell budget, of course, but we also have had success in stabilizing the Departments of Energy research budget and shaping it to include early commercial support. But in 2012, we also moved aggressively on the procurement side. FCH&E is developing a fuel cell procurement plan to present to the new Congress, focusing on the capabilities of fuel cells bring to the Defense Department. Someone once asked American labor leader Samuel Gompers what he wanted, and he answered, more. I know what he means. I want more money for research, or we want more money for research, more support into critical markets, more federal leases and purchases, more tax credits to support commercial sales and infrastructure deployment, more non-financial incentives, more equity for fuel cells and utility regulations, efficiency programs, and vehicle regulation, more enabling codes and standards. It sounds like a lot, but it is no more than any other energy technology has enjoyed in the past, often with far less social benefits. And the government support embodied in this list works. It lowers prices, improves performance, fosters investment in U.S.-based high-tech growth industries, reduces pollution, and enhances energy security. I wish I could tell you that all we need to do is convince the government that it is our turn. In fact, our needs will cost less than the investments in biofuels, renewable coal, oil, or the nuclear energy. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. We are likely facing a prolonged period of government austerity. In fact, there is fundamental debate now about whether the government should even be involved in actively shaping the energy technologies of the future. To top it off, an incredible number of industries will demand to be a part of whatever new energy policy is implemented. So we need to compete, and we need to compete even on this uneven playing field. To succeed, we will need a new level of activism, a commitment from even a broader cross-section of our industry, ideally from our customers and our potential customers and our suppliers, and not just those involved in the industry. That's why FCS&EA's strategy is so important. But we also have a secret weapon, and that is all of us in the room and our colleagues back home. In the budget debates a few years ago, we proved two things. One, our industry can mobilize if there's a clear and present threat. And two, we can win if we mobilize. Letters, personal contact, media, opinion leader education, and direct lobbying, these are things that work, that people pay attention to. The big question is whether we will work together. It's all too easy to sit on the sidelines and let someone else take your place, take your case to the policymakers. But on the grassroots, there isn't anybody else. It's just you and me. That's it. So we need to mobilize, because believe me, other competing technologies will mobilize. And they may have more money than us. And unless we get out the word, they will win. So can we compete? I think we can, but we have to mobilize and work together. The Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association has begun the job, rekindling policymaker interest and removing at least some of the barriers of ignorance and suspicion that have infected those in the policy community. They can lead, but we need to step up. We need to be part of the process and not spectators watching from the sidelines. We have a great story to tell. We have exciting, world-changing products. If we match them with our own dedication and activism, we will certainly succeed. So just in closing, I hope there's some of you in the audience are wondering, what can I do to help? Hopefully we've planted that seed, and I would just like to add what I do to help in this regard. And it doesn't really involve giving speeches to audiences like this. I work for IDATEC, as more indicated. I travel to Washington, D.C. as part of meetings with this organization or with the Fuel Cell Seminar about 4 times a year. And on each of those trips, I try to carve out a couple hours to go to the Hill to meet with my representatives from Oregon or from any other state that might have questions related to fuel cells. And that's a very positive message, because all politics are local. And if they can hear from their constituents, they listen. And so I encourage you, if any of you are in the D.C. area, get a hold of Maury or get a hold of Aaron here, and they will help you set up a meeting with your representatives so you can talk to them about fuel cells and what it means to you and what it means to their state and the economy. And the other thing that I would like to just share is, you know, if the organization or the industry offers or asks for help, I encourage you to say yes. Encourage you to take the effort to volunteer, to put out an hour or two a week or a month or whatever it might be that you can do and volunteer. And that might be simply helping to get out the vote, to talk to your congressmen again, your senators, but just be involved, because if people like us who have an equity stake in this industry can't get involved, then who will? Just think about that. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Mike. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you a good friend over the past year and a half, Klaus Bonhoff, who is the Managing Director of the National Organization of Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technology in Germany. Klaus, please.
Please welcome Managing Director of Germany's National Organization for Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technology, Klaus Bonhoff.
Good morning, everybody. You know this song? It's Jethro Tull. I talked to a colleague the other day, and he didn't know Jethro Tull, so that's how I learned I'm getting older. It's great music, though. Anyways, thank you, Murray, for the introduction, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here this morning and talk to you in the keynote session on state of the industry. Now, NOW, which is the National Organization for Hydrogen and Fuel Cells in Germany, is not industry, and we're not government. We're somewhere in between. We're actually working at the interface between the stakeholders in this field, acting as a program management organization to coordinate the federally funded activities in Germany and making sure that people work together and stick to the plan. We are coordinating the National Innovation Program for Hydrogen and Fuel Cells in Germany, which was set up as a public-private partnership to accelerate market preparation of these technologies. Since 2008, collectively, the federal government and the industry had spent almost €1 billion on these technologies, and we have more than 500 individual partners, mainly from industry, involved in our program. So it's it's quite a good size of a program, and on that basis I would like to reflect on the state of the industry where I think we are in regards to hydrogen and fuel cells, of course with a specific focus on activities in Germany. We are on a clear pathway towards changing the energy system and changing the transportation system. Not only in Germany, but this is true globally. And, you know, the key words are saving energy, energy efficiency, zero emissions, and renewable energies. This is what we call in Germany the Energiewende, which is the transitioning of the energy system. We share the opinion that hydrogen and fuel cells are key technologies in that context. Unfortunately, it is not common sense that this is the case. And it is an important task for us, for all of us, to make sure that we have a more convincing communication and ever more convincing practical solutions to the problems in the energy field. Today we are in a transition phase when we talk about hydrogen fuel cells from an R&D and demonstration phase towards commercial viability. From a product point of view, the buzzwords still are cost and durability. So we have to continue R&D, and personally I do believe we even have to strengthen specifically basic R&D. So yes, we have to go back into materials, membranes, catalyst, fundamental understanding. While we need to continue applied R&D and demonstration, these topics have to be addressed more from my perspective. Reducing cost is also a matter of a competitive supply base. So building this supply base is crucial in getting products out into the market. And there's two aspects to this. One is the supply industry that already is actively involved in this field. They need to be strengthened, they need to be motivated to further invest to develop the product. But also we need to motivate new players. So we have to come to a solution where critical components are not only based on single source, but we actually have multiple players providing that technology. And the challenge for both, for the existing suppliers and new suppliers coming into the game, is the critical balance in between production volumes and cost. And we are at a point where suppliers need to invest in production capacity, but where volumes may not be large enough, at least in the short term, to justify these investments. So really, how do you handle that risk? Knowing that longer term, yes, there is a business case, but that's really the challenge, one of the challenges within the industry. I do not expect hydrogen and fuel cells to enter into the market fast enough in a business-as-usual scenario. We do need public-private partnerships, and we do need what I call the 3 C's. This is cooperation, commitment, and continuity. And let me give some examples with what I mean with that. Looking or reflecting on some of the activities we have in Germany in our various sectors, and our program is divided into different sectors. We're dealing with hydrogen fuel cells in transportation, in hydrogen production is an issue, especially hydrogen production via CO2-free pathways, stationary fuel cells, and special markets. So on cooperation, we have clustered our activities in our program in so-called lighthouse projects to facilitate the exchange between the companies, the exchange between competitors, but also the exchange between different industry sectors. People that might not be too used in talking to each other, we facilitate their exchange and that discussion. Now in the transportation sector, one example is the Clean Energy Partnership, which you probably know as one of the largest demonstration activities on hydrogen and fuel cell vehicles. So we're demonstrating on public roads, passenger cars and buses, alongside with the infrastructure that is needed and the hydrogen production pathways to provide energy and hydrogen to these stations. From an industry point of view, it's the auto companies, it's the energy companies, gas companies, oil companies, supply industry. They're all involved in these activities, and the CEP really provides them with a platform to address the critical and common issues towards commercialization. Just one example, talking about station development, we're actually setting up some new structures here to go into more details onto these discussions. We need to find practical solutions once we start selling hydrogen as a commercial fuel in regards to hydrogen quality. Hydrogen metering is an issue. The fueling protocol has to be agreed, and station hardware still needs to be developed further. So we do make sure that all the industries involved sit together, share their experience, and we take that not only on a national level but even on an international level forward and provide the experiences from the ongoing demonstration projects to the worldwide ongoing processes as in ISO, SAE, and whatever it may be. Another example is from the stationary fuel cell sector. Our fuel cell field test program for residential CHP is a project called CALUX, and we're field testing some 200, 250 units at this point in time. We have utilities operating these units. We have, of course, the manufacturers of the units that supply the hardware. They work together, sharing their experience on operations, on customer acceptance, on market introduction, but also on hardware. And one example is they jointly develop a desulfurization unit. So this is a small example, but an important one to show how competitors have to work together on that component level to move forward to reduce the cost. Yet another example is from the special markets. Just recently we had started a network called Clean Power Net. This is for market preparation for backup power and grid-independent power supply. And this network brings together all the stakeholders, whether it's the fuel cell manufacturers, the users, the service providers, all the people involved. And here, one of the issues they are commonly facing is the hydrogen supplies. So they are sharing their insights into logistics, cost, and really come up with, try to come up with a solution that works for all of them. Now, all of these cooperations I mentioned are in a pre-commercial and pre-competitive state, or environment. So one might argue, well, that's fairly easy. It's pre-competitive, you know, it's easy to have friends. It becomes more difficult when you move forward towards really preparing the markets and creating the markets. But we need to continue to work in these joint initiatives, and I'll give you a few examples how we do that in the various sectors. It is more complicated because all of a sudden the role of government becomes different. The phase we're in right now, the role of government is fairly easy. It's about, you know, providing R&D funds, and we do that, and we have a solid base for that in Germany and elsewhere as well. But it becomes more difficult because when you start getting into the commercial frame, what's really the role of government? That has to be discussed and agreed upon. It's about business models, it's about antitrust issues, so cooperation does become more difficult. But let me just give you 3 examples from our industry how we do that. H2 Mobility, I guess, is a pretty well-known initiative by now on planning and then implementing a commercial hydrogen infrastructure in Germany. We have auto companies, oil companies, gas companies, supply industry, all sitting around the table jointly analyzing what it takes to build up commercial-scale hydrogen supply for passenger cars in Germany. This is built upon the commitment we have at this point in time from that industry, but also from our government, to build 50 stations until 2015. So in June of this year, our Ministry of Transportation had a press event together with industry where he announced that we will do these 50 stations as part of our R&D frame. And then, of course, the question is, well, what do we do beyond that? Starting with the 51st station, how do we build up that infrastructure on a commercial basis? And the industry put their act together, analyzed the picture, and they're now under negotiations to jointly found a joint entity that would invest in and operate hydrogen stations. So sharing the risk is one of the key issues that has to be addressed. And also, of course, to coordinate ramp-up of the vehicles and network development for the stations. So this is why it is crucial to have infrastructure companies and auto companies sitting at one table to discuss this. The good news is, longer term, there is a viable business case to operate a hydrogen infrastructure. The challenge is the first 5 years to take that, who takes the investment risk. If you look at the figures, it's not a huge risk, but still, companies don't have extra money to spend, so they really look into that in very much detail. Another example for an initiative moving towards commercial activities is an initiative called Performing Energy. This is in the context of hydrogen as a storage media when it comes to increasing the share of renewables in our power sector. Germany has quite some aggressive targets in increasing their share of renewables, and even if we, and we have to do that, increase the capacity of our grid, if we implement smart grid technologies, we still need storage. We still need storage of large amounts of energy over longer periods of time. And this is really, if you look at the physics, where hydrogen comes in. And it is a pretty lively and dynamic discussion at this point in time. And it actually brought hydrogen back on the political agenda. So all of a sudden you have a storage media that helps in increasing the share of renewables. And at the same time, you have a fuel based on renewables that provides you with zero emission, with a basis for zero emission mobility. So the industry put their act together. We're trying to understand the timing, the cost of all these issues. And again, it's about sharing the knowledge and looking at the businesses behind this. This is, I guess, a very crucial point. The third initiative I want to mention is from our residential CHP activities. So this is 1 to 5 kilowatt units, and actually we have different manufacturers looking at all kinds of technologies, low temperature PEM, high temperature PEM, SOFC technology. Beyond R&D, this is what the scenarios show, we will need some kind of a technology introduction instrument. And we're talking about subsidies to the end user, we're talking about feed-in bonuses for fuel cell power. And this is not something unheard of. We just don't have that yet in Germany, but looking at the international scene, looking at Japan, Innofarm as the, I would say, shining example of overcoming this phase of market introduction. They have some 30,000 units sold in the market with subsidies, but with a decreasing subsidy amount per unit. So I think they're on a good path there, and that is a good example of how to do this. Here in the US, you do have tax credits for fuel cell installations, which I think is important. Korea has a feed-in tariff in place, and that is probably one of the bases why CHIP was so happy to receive that contract, I guess, on the units for Korea. So this is the kind of collaboration and cooperation that we need. But let me come to the second C, the commitment. We need the commitment. And yes, we do have industry being committed to developing the technology. Why? Because they do want to sell products in the future, and the future looks differently from what it is today. So yes, we will need residential CHP units offering a 30% CO2 benefit over incumbent technologies. Yes, we do need zero emission mobility with extended range. Yes, we do need backup power systems with extended runtimes. These are products that will be needed in future. So this is why the industry is so committed to move forward, because they want to stay in the market and, of course, be a player in that. But the challenge is to find the right balance between the investment in longer-term positive business perspectives and the short-term profitability. So commitment is required from all stakeholders along the value chain, which of course is specifically difficult for SMEs. So this is why we need also commitment from governments to support them and to go through this high-risk phase that they're in. We need to continue to work to get an appropriate policy framework in place, and this cannot be just for one nation, and you probably know the IPHE, the International Partnership for Hydrogen Fuel Cells in the Economy. This is a forum of 18 governments sitting together twice a year, and this is where we need to get our voice in, to ask them for the right policy framework. This is where they're exchanging, and if there's good examples around the world, they'll pick it up, and that's exactly what we need to continue to do. The third C is on continuity. The fuel cell industry does not have a perfect record in terms of keeping its promises. We just have to face that, and people keep reminding us of that. Which doesn't mean that governments necessarily always showed a consistent support scheme. So, there's reasons why things happen as they do. We are happy to have in Germany with the NIP a 10-year program funding frame over a longer period of time, which does provide some security and which actually motivated quite a number of industry players to get into this game because they understood, okay, this is not a 2 to 3 year blub, this is really something where a lot of people are serious about. Collectively, we need to make sure that we stay on track towards commercialization. And with commercialization, I mean mass markets. We need to get hydrogen and fuel cells into the transportation system, into the energy system, and I am optimistic that we will get there. We see new players entering into the game. Mentioned the CEP, the Clean Energy Partnership. We have, of course, the German OEMs involved, Daimler, Volkswagen, BMW, Opel. We have Japanese OEMs involved, as in Toyota and Honda, and just recently Hyundai from Korea joined the Clean Energy Partnership. And this is because we provide at this point in time a 700-bar infrastructure at publicly accessible hydrogen stations. So it's a good area to really test this technology. And you probably know that Hyundai had announced to start bringing volumes, producing thousands of vehicles starting this year. And if you look at all the companies, the OEMs involved in our program, they do represent 50% of car sales globally. So it is a meaningful and very serious activity that continues to go on. We have new manufacturers, for example, in the field of residential CHP. CFC, the Australian company, had founded or had opened a manufacturing facility in Germany just recently. So we're moving on, we're progressing there. On backup power, we have startup companies that grow, which is good. That's, of course, part of their business or business plan. But we also have established players from the backup industry that start to think, well, fuel cells isn't a bad thing after all. So they do get started in this as well, and they understand the opportunities behind fuel cells. So we see this continuing story going on. Now, I mentioned 3 C's. I forgot a 4th one, which is conclusions. What's the state of the industry? The portfolio of industry players is very broad. It's from small startups to large corporations. It's from component suppliers all the way to the OEMs that in the end sell the end product. And that's what it is all about, selling the end product into the market and providing all those benefits that we know of. Now, 3 observations from my point of view on the industry and the state of the industry. All industry players involved in the program continue to invest in R&D and demonstration. They do want to introduce a product, and first products do become available and are available. But, and I think this has to be clear as well, some are in doubt, maybe even frustrated, and it might be specifically true for the supply industry or some parts of the supply industry. So ramping up volumes with the timing around that and the costs that you need and the investment you need, this is a critical issue. So we have to make sure that there is a trust between the supply industry and the OEMs to bring this further and to not stop halfway down the road. But I'm optimistic that this will happen. 3rd observation is that new players are seeking new business opportunities. We do see that. I mentioned the case of hydrogen as a storage media, where all of a sudden wind park operators become interested in hydrogen because they want to expand their business. They want to build more wind farms, which they cannot because the grid capacity doesn't allow for it. So in entering the hydrogen picture, all of a sudden they are looking into business models to produce hydrogen and then sell that hydrogen to the transportation market, to the chemical industry. And yes, hydrogen based on renewables is key. This is very clear from a German perspective, from a political perspective, but I think it is key for us globally as well. And there is business cases in there to be found. In any case, it is time for action, and let's do it together. Thank you very much.
So at this point, we're having a little change up. We were going to go into panel discussion, but Klaus's travel plans have changed today due to the snowstorm that's south of here and the direction he needs to head. So he needs to leave in a very short time period. So I want to know, are there any, open the floor right now to any questions directly for Klaus in relationship to his talk and what's going on in Europe or his opinions on other fuel cell related activities? Go ahead.
My name is Noriko Bering. I'm a new author of fuel cell book. I have a specific question for Dr. Bahnhof. It is reported that Zurich Research Institute has recently succeeded in demonstration of SOSC cells for more than 40,000 hours, which is actually a remarkable achievement and world record that. And I'm wondering, what is your government plan to utilize this advancement in this clean energy project in the future?
I hope I understood you correctly. It's about lifetime and the, you were mentioning the example of Jülich that has achieved a new lifetime record, if you want to.
Right.
Well, of course, lifetime remains one of the key issues when it comes to residential CHP. People talk about ultimately you would like to end up with 80,000 hours or so. Of course, lifetime is also related to cost. So if I look at the companies that now start to commercially introduce these units, they have to build into their commercial model possibly replacing a stack because lifetime is not long enough for the end user. So to your point, what is important is to fill that, or to link academic results with industry development. I'm not saying that we're perfect at it. I'm not saying that I know what the perfect model is, but it is clearly something that is very important to be looked into. Also, this is just one example. This does show that, yes, indeed, we have huge achievements on a technical basis on hydrogen fuel cells, not only on SOFC, not only on lifetime on cycling, but also on other fuel cell technologies. This, you know, we tend to forget this. We tend to talk about not to talk about our success stories, which we need to do more.
Thank you.
Other questions for Klaus? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to move into a panel discussion with the three individuals up here, with Maury, Aaron Lane, and Frank Wolak. These are our government affairs experts that we have in front of you today. So I'm going to start off the questioning, maybe get them going, and hopefully you guys will be able to follow in a few questions of your own. But in light of the recent election that occurred just a few nights ago, what do you guys think will be the priorities that will take place and shape up over the next 6 months? And Maury, if we can, we want to start with you, Maury?
Sure. What you see in the election is the results basically speak for themselves, in which there won't be any change in the numbers where you have in the Senate. The Democrats obviously control that. The House, the Republicans will control, and the White House will still be under the good care of President Obama. However, what you're looking at is possibly major changes at the second level. And one of the priorities, I think you'll see it with the administration, is you've had a very, very stable cabinet. And the cabinet has been there for now 4 years. So don't be surprised if you see some major changes, including the rumored change of the Department of Energy Secretary Chu. There's been talk about him moving on and going back to California for a year. So there's going to be change in Washington. Even though people have felt that the election didn't do much in changing the dynamic, I think you're going to see a changed dynamic, given the change in the White House, the change with I'm talking about the staff of the White House, the various secretaries. And in addition to that, you get changes in leadership on the committee structure. You get changes in leadership on the subcommittee structures, both in the House and the Senate, as people move and change. So those are the things I see as the immediate priorities as far as the leadership of the various parties, and I'll hand it over to Aaron.
Sure. You know, like Maury said, it appears as though not much has changed as far as the numbers. The House is still going to be led by the Republicans, the Senate by the Democrats, and the president stays the same. But I do see some things changes, particular in the House, and how the Republicans will engage with the other bodies of Congress. You know, the Democrats gained a couple seats, and the Republicans lost a few seats. And I think that I had been noticing a change as far as how the Republicans had been sort of acting and campaigning and behaving in the last couple weeks. The last couple weeks I went and I met with 30 House freshmen because they had come out and said that they were in favor of moving forward with the tax extenders. And as many of you know, it's been all over the news, one of the top priorities is, do they extend the Bush tax credits? If they don't extend those credits, it is going to mean higher taxes on the middle class. Now, different parties believe that how we should react to that, and different parties understand what tax reform means, but no doubt about it, dealing with tax and expired credits is going to be one of the first things that they look to deal with in the lame duck Congress. And where this gets back to the change is, you know, when many of these freshmen had run 2 years ago, their priorities had said, you know, DC is not working, we are going to stop things, and our job is to, you know, just come in there and fix what's broken and, you know, stop things. But as time had gone on and the election had come about, they said, you know, we really do need to work with others. We need to figure out a way to fix things, and to do it, we need to be a little more bipartisan. And even Boehner has come out in the last couple of days and said, I gotta work with these folks on taxes. We got to figure out what we're going to do with this quote-unquote fiscal cliff, and we're going to have to figure out how we're going to get a budget. So I think those are the priorities, and I think there's change, and I think that there is an opportunity for a little more bipartisanship. I've been doing this for 16 years, and I'm still pretty optimistic, unlike many folks. But I do see those as the priorities, and I see an opportunity for us to move forward. Now, it might just mean that they punt it to the next Congress, but at least they're probably going to come together and agree to punt.
I've got an observation about this as well, and I'm going to bring it down to a focal point of this industry. But before I do that, I just wanted to point out that the map behind us was not intended to have blue and red points, but it was intended. We've seen maps for the past 3 months, and we wanted to put this up as a backdrop because it shows the diversity of our industry, where we're located, and that we cover much of the U.S. In our diversity and also in our political access. But so it's there to provoke some thought. But what I think is important among the details that are going to be addressed, whether it's tax policy or specifics of the budget, for our industry, I think we have to face sort of a broad reality. One, that the new administration and the Congress are going to be dealing with growing our economy as fast as can possibly happen while facing the issue of addressing the budget. And so what that creates is kind of an interesting dynamic that you're not going to be able to grow the budget by just simply infusing lots of money, or grow the economy by simply just infusing lots of money into it, because that affects the budget. So for us as an industry, as we petition Congress and we look for our ways to seek support from the Department of Energy, I think we have to recognize that we want to be part and seen as part of growing the economy. On the other hand, we need to convince people that we are not going to be detrimental to the budget process of reducing costs. And I think if we keep that in our minds as we go forward the next 2 or 3 years, hopefully we'll have some successes. But those are two big themes that are going to permeate everything that goes on in Washington.
Thank you very much for your comments. I'd like to open it to the floor at this time before I just go into a whole variety of questions. So do we have questions from the audience?
what specifics, if any, would you like to see the government install to help boost along the hydrogen economy, or, you know, just to get on the path of, you know, going for a cleaner energy economy?
Sure. Some of the specific things that our industry have been working on are, we've got some great tax credits that were originally put in place in 2005. And when they were put in place, in fact, they were actually written in 2000, and it took so long to get them in place. And in that amount of time, our industry has changed. And so some of the things that we'd like to see is maybe fixing those credits to be a little more adaptable to what we need as an industry right now. Mike had mentioned earlier that Congressman Tonko and Senator Schumer had introduced a bill that deals with forklifts and the automotives, and then our friends Larson and Blumenthal from Connecticut have introduced legislation that's dealing with hydrogen infrastructure and then also stationary. So, you know, different parts of our industry have different views on the aspects of tax legislation, but there are ways in which we can make it better and fix. Also, like Mike mentioned, some of the things that we really care about are stabilizing our budgets within the Department of Energy. We've gotten really far with that, and we're doing well, but we want to make sure that we continue to prioritize our industry, our research and development, and then also market penetration. We're also, we've got some Department of Defense language that we're working on for procurement that was mentioned earlier. And then we're also just looking for ways in which we can go through every aspect of the government and figure out ways that we can work best with the products that we have, we can sell to them, and we can provide the most benefit. Frank, you probably have some other specifics you'd like to add.
I've always got specifics.
Yeah.
I think what we'd like to see, or what I'd like to see, and what will actually happen are two different things. What I'd like to see is for this Congress to take up a renewed debate about clean energy policy and energy policy in general, and one that doesn't focus so much on the theory of climate or on the renewable versus non-renewable, but puts together into one unified program the recognition of the impacts of climate change, such as we've seen in the past week, the recognition that it's not a renewables-only agenda, and that we have to factor in the continued use of natural gas and even other fossil fuels, and that come out of that debate with a practical going forward energy policy that also recognizes the value of this industry. That's a big point, and I don't think it's going to be achievable in this particular Congress, but I think that that plenty of the elements of the discussion of those practical items are going to be in front of members of Congress, and we'd like to just kind of fuel that debate as much as we can this year.
Can I just add one more thing? One of the great things that the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association is doing and has come together to do is James Warner leads the government affairs aspect of it. And we're really working together to come up with what's called an omnibus bill, which means a package of things that will really benefit the fuel cell and hydrogen industry. What are the things that we think that we really need in putting together and getting them introduced in Congress? And as Frank said, it's a tough thing, and in some ways it's going to be a message, but it's an opportunity for us to have it all in one place and understand what our industry really needs. So if you are a member of the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association, I suggest you join our government affairs calls and work with James. If you're not a member, you better get on board, because we got a good bill coming on, and we'd love for you to be a part of it.
Thanks. I just want to add one thing as a broad philosophy. There's an old saying that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And basically, what we want to try to do as an association at the 30,000-foot level is to try to get our industry back at the table. For a little while, we've been ignored. There have been other priorities by the administration, by the Hill, and we've been working over the past, say, 16, 18 months of just getting the industry messaging out to the Hill, to the administration. We were very successful in meeting with various leaders at the Office of Management Budget, at DOE. We've had meetings on the Hill. We've reinvigorated the Senate caucus, as you heard, and the House caucus. These people are allies. And in talking about allies, what's very important is also we're trying to reach out to have natural allies of our own. We're a small industry, but we still, as we like to say, we are the all-the-above technology. And we're also the all-of-the-above energy source when we come to natural gas, when you come to renewables. We need to even educate those organizations that support those various interests and letting them know that we can help you promote your interests. So that is one thing that we've been focusing on at the association, is to get that message out there, because for far too long we've been not at the table and more frequently on the menu when it comes to budget cuts and other things. And it's through the hard work of the people around here and in this room that we're getting this message out and the work done.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is John Widener with Sud Chemie. As was mentioned, the NFARM has been very successful with the way that the government has sponsored and subsidized fuel cells. My personal opinion, the tax incentive's great, but it's difficult for me as a consumer to be stimulated by something that's going to be very complicated and delayed to get the money back through a tax credit. So my question is there any discussion, or is it even on the table that we would go to a direct subsidy? I mean, we had cash for clunkers, and that was very successful. So can we give a direct subsidy? You buy a fuel cell, you get the money right away. It's offsets the purchase price like in the NFARM project.
I'll just answer quickly on one general theme, and that is, one thing I can assure you is that you're going to see a very, very difficult budgetary environment over the next several years, whether we're facing the fiscal cliff at the end of this year or whatever they plan to do for the budgets next year. Everything that we're asked all the time is, well, how are you going to pay for that? You want to do this? How are you going to pay for that? Where are you going to take the money from? So we want to sensitize all of you that it's not business as usual. There are going to be programs, there are going to be things that are going to be paid for, but we're dealing in a much more austere budgetary environment that I think we've faced in a very, very long time. And so when asking issues about subsidies, tax credits, other programs, I personally believe that if we hold our own, we'll be doing very, very well.
It's true. The only thing I'd like to add is that we were part of the very successful 1603 program, which was the grants in lieu of tax credits program that came out of the stimulus. In the last year, we have been working very closely with the renewable organizations, solar, some wind, biomass, and others to reinstate the 1603 program because it was so successful and it was able to get the cash in the hands of our customers very quickly. But unfortunately, that program expired, and because it was a stimulus program and because of the cost, it is not likely to be included in the Extenders program going forward. But that doesn't mean that we don't continue to talk about it and express how helpful that was. And in times of more money, we'd like to see that to come back.
I think across the country, whether it's at the federal level or at the state level, the general trend is away from cash outlays and more toward variable payments or financing. And that just doesn't apply to fuel cells or hydrogen technologies, but as you know, especially at the state level. Aaron talked about the 1603 tax credit federally, but even at the state level, states are looking at incentivizing the deployment of technologies, and if those technologies are commercial, then there should be some risk borne by those people who install them, and so grants incentives are going to be much more a variable or a financed arrangement, and that the other sense is that giving away cash, this is part of the 1603 issue, to someone up front puts sort of the outlay of dollars on the government, state or federal, and that's just a trend that we're going to see move further and further from a direct cash incentive as I see it across the country.
And let me add one other thing, just for all of you to think about, and I'm going to give you my email address. There are a lot of things that government can do that doesn't cost money. Let me give you the best example, for instance. HOV lanes. In California, when the vote qualified for HOV compliance, its sales skyrocketed. You know, you have things that don't cost money, and people ask about these ideas all the time. If you have any ideas, please email me at mmarkowitz@fchea.org of things that don't cost money but that can help promote the sale and use of our product, because that is something that is very easily sold in Washington and other capitals, state capitals. When you come up with ideas that don't ask them for any money, they are very, very interested in listening to those ideas. And there are a lot of very, very smart people around in this room. And if you have any ideas that, such as what I was talking about, HOV, free parking, I'm just using on the automotive side, but other incentives that could be done without costing any money, please email them to me, because we would love to be able to use them.
I'd like to add one more thing. Also, they incentivize without costing money, and also things that can potentially eliminate barriers. So we all know that you guys are out there facing, and you're working really hard, and some things will come across that you can't cite a station because it's too far away or too close to the building, or things like that we may not be privy to because we're in Washington. Please add that to your list that you send to Maury, because those are the things that people are asking for, ways that we can help.
Okay, the next question in the audience.
Noriko Bering, what is your own opinion or your own assessment of the current fuel cell technology and industry? And also, what would you like the government to do to promote the situation in terms of R&D policy and industrial policy? Although I noticed you have an individual, very excellent effort, but is there any way to compile them all in a comprehensive manner, whatever you suggested right now, non-expensive initiative like that, incentive issues also. A variety of issues are promoted in a sort of different path. Is there any way that you people can coordinate some kind of body which could coordinate all this effort, both those very interesting initiative which doesn't cost money, and also how to improve, how to promote current R&D. Current, we have a variety of technologies that can be further developed. Now, how can you have a policy to promote that, as well as what we have now, the product, how we would promote that kind of thing. The product currently we have, it has to be promoted for commercialization. Now, those things have to be promoted at the same time rather than individually. And so that if you do it individually, you would compete and kill each other. So you have to help each other. You have to have some kind of body to promote the issue sort of in a balanced way. That's my opinion, as well as your assessment of the industry.
Thank you. Let me say this. We are in a fortunate position as an industry in that in some ways we're able to create our own rules of the game. You know, you have other established industries that you've had to fit within a certain mold. And I know from my previous experience in the auto industry and also in the electric utility industry that you are already existing with a sort of a set plate. But we have that unique advantage, for instance, of trying to work with the international community to harmonize rules and regulations so that we're not trying to comply with different rules in the EU versus the US versus Korea versus Japan. We should actually use our unique status in trying to create a more harmonious atmosphere to help develop our industry. In addition to that, and this is I've heard from even several of our members, we also need a movement towards standardization in some ways. Some of the things that we are building are still on the customized level, and to help bring costs down, because costs are the key component to getting our industry moving and taking it to the next level. And standardization of certain products, of certain materials, of certain processes can help in doing that. We as an association can really act as a conduit to getting these things done. But just so you know, madam, in the United States we have that little thing called antitrust law. So we have to be very, very careful in what we do, that we don't coordinate so carefully that we violate any of those laws. But we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to take advantage of where the industry is today. I think it's really, really important that we recognize that. I know that for the past several decades we've been promoting ourselves as being just around the corner. Well, today we really, really are. And what makes that different is because we have products now that are commercially available that can compete on a dollar-to-dollar basis with the conventional products that are on the shelf today. We are at the spot where we're getting the technology proven. The technology is robust. We just need to get the costs down. So I like to use this example a lot. We're very, very little different than the flat screen TVs that you've seen 10 years ago, where we're really affordable for specialized applications. But if we could get those costs down, we'll just zoom off the shelf. And we've got to create that coordination with an industry to help do that.
Just an observation that on the notion of sort of an association or some kind of a large panel that looks at these issues. One, at a business level, that is exactly what the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association does in trying to advocate for things, certainly on behalf of its members, but more broadly on behalf of the industry. And the more members we've got, the more we can advocate for a wider group. But if the notion is to create some kind of a commission that would look at all the facets of this particular industry, that may do more setback than good. And I'll just give my opinion on this. At this point, this industry needs to show some successes. It needs to dispel the myths that we are a perpetual R&D type of industry. We need to start showing critical mass, the ability to scale up in manufacturing. Those are all very practical signs that the industry has vitality. And the establishment of some sort of a broad planning commission may actually give the perception that the industry needs more study, more evaluation, and really is not ready to be moving into the energy mainstream. So just a point of large commissions that study multiple factors also create the perception that we're still very academic, and that's just a point of caution.
Are there more questions from the audience? Go ahead.
My question was in regards to reducing roadblocks and improving adoption of some of the technologies. Do you think there's a role in terms of the relationship of the federal government with the state governments? Is there some initiatives or consortiums or increased communication that could help to bridge the gap between some of the federal efforts and state levels? I'm looking at our nice map in front of us, and over the course of the last few days, I've heard a lot of efforts and significant work in the Northeast cluster as well as California, and I'm thinking there's a lot of states that probably don't have the same level of resources and experience but might benefit from some of the experiences of these other states. So it's a general comment I wanted to see if you would address in terms of the role of the states and how the federal government may partner with some of the states in terms of reducing roadblocks and improving some of the pathways for commercialization.
Sure. Obviously, it's beneficial if we could help coordinate the efforts of the federal government with the states, but it's a very, very difficult process. Let me give you a good example. Renewable energy standards, or renewable portfolio standards, however you want to call them, they have never been adopted by the federal government, but they're being adopted by the states. They're being adopted by regions. And I personally feel that that's an area that we need to amplify our efforts in the states and the regions, because they're the ones that are leading the stationary source area. What you see happen in California, for instance, on the ZEB mandate will be spread out to the other parts of the country most likely. So yes, there's a definite role for us to get more and more involved in the states and to help formulate policy there, because missing that opportunity will actually be missing an opportunity to promote our technology. There are enormous markets out there that are available for us to try to help promote the sale of our product and get policies to help promote those. In addition to that, yes, you have to deal with the federal government on certain levels, but at the same time, you can't ignore the states. I don't know how easy it would be to combine the two, but in certain aspects, I think that as an industry itself, we need to focus more on certain activities outside the Beltway and make sure that we have our inside the Beltway covered.
No, the only thing I would add to that, and I think you're right in everything you said. I do know that the Department of Energy has been trying to work and connect with some of the states and working particularly on the codes and standards side. But I agree with Maury, as an industry, we have to appreciate and support the efforts that are going on in the states. And it's very helpful to us if you know of things that are happening in the states and you want the industry to help support it. It's wonderful when you reach out to us and say, hey, this is going on in Colorado, this is very important, can you help us connect the dots and can you help us support it? And we're always glad to do that.
I'll just point out that while we don't have a top-down national policy for every piece of clean energy, and that might be the best world, we live in a reality where we do have state and federal governments. And while the federal government waffles at what it might want to see as comprehensive energy policy, the states continue to do what they feel is appropriate for their own level of activity and the kind of resources they have. And so they keep marching forward, and what that does produce, and it trickles upward to the federal government, but what the states do is they create programs, and they become incubators of those programs. They change them, they adjust them, and you've got very progressive states, California, New York, certainly Connecticut, that do create models of activity that the federal government does look at, and the more of those state programs that get put together that show progress and show the way the industry can work, does find its way into the hands of people at the federal government. What the federal government can do about it is another question, how quickly they act. But the states are phenomenal incubators of programs.
And you know what, I'd like to just add one other thing. Don't forget that in our political system here in the country, we are a bottom-up political system. And that is that you have people who are mayors, state legislators, attorneys general, other people who then move up the political spectrum from working in the states, working in their town halls, and then they become members of Congress. They become U.S. senators, and eventually some of them even become president of the United States. The point being is that besides the ideas, people learn from what's going on in the states, and they bring those ideas with them to Washington.
Can I just ask one favor of all of you? Because these lights are so bright, we can't see anybody. So you may be my best friend in asking a question, and I don't have a clue. So if you could just give us your name and your affiliation, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Peter Hoffman from the Hydrogen and Fuel Center. It's a concrete suggestion, really, addressed to Maury primarily. I just got in my mailbox today an announcement from the Electric Drive Transport Association, battery makers, quoted in something called the Detroit Bureau, which is a trade publication, basically, which is read by many car editors and environmental editors. And they basically say very innocuously, we congratulate President Obama on his re-election, and we hope and expect to work with him on the introduction of more alternative fuel systems, energy systems. I think this is something which Maury's association could put out, hopefully over the weekend. It might get picked up by people like Detroit Bureau or the New York Times automotive section and get some spread and get the word out, particularly if you can say this was something that came out of the fuel cell seminar. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Jerry D. Keller, Treadstone Technologies. Last year at the ARPE Summit, Mike Ramage, who was formerly with ExxonMobil, was sitting on a panel and he talked about the natural gas opportunities, fracking, etc., that it was going to be a real game changer and possible paradigm shift for the fuel cell market. In the panel's opinion, is that something that still exists or still could occur? And number one, are you seeing that? Number two, given the results of the election, do you think that that is a possible strategy that could impact our marketplace going forward? Thank you.
Well, Jerry, the answer, I think, is that it is absolutely a phenomenon that is going on around us and is something that we as an industry have got to try to ride the wave. There's no doubt that that's part of it. I think that the difference between last year and going forward is that the utilization of natural gas is happening, and the expansion of supply is happening despite the added benefits of our kinds of technologies and integration of fuel or creation of hydrogen, fuel cells or creation of hydrogen from natural gas. And I think the next wave for the natural gas phenomenon with our involvement is not just the use of more gas, putting more gas into pipelines and displacing coal plants with natural gas combined cycles that are going on all around us, but the fact that policymakers, state and federal, are really going to want to look at how do we best utilize this natural gas. And that's kind of a delayed reaction situation to the consumer just wanting to buy lower, cheaper gas when it's available. And that's really where we have the opportunity as states start to look at expanding pipelines, looking at best and highest use of technologies, distributed generation, and even the question of more readily available hydrogen refueling stations. And so though that second tier of the gas phenomena is where we begin to really show some opportunity to jump on that bandwagon, and that's really where we have to focus our efforts.
Jerry, I can tell you firsthand that in meeting with people like Dave Danielson just last month, that's the thing that's on their mind. They are, both Secretary Chu and Dave Danielson, they were just talking about how do you fit into this new natural gas paradigm that we're dealing with. I love to be able to tell people that we can convert natural gas into a zero-emission vehicle from the emissions from the vehicle itself. We actually help with with decentralized or distributed generation. We can help make the use of natural gas more efficient. We've gone from I'd say the last 10 years, we've gone from a situation where we were looking to be a net importer of natural gas, and we're looking at locating LNG stations around the country, to one that we're now looking at possibly being a net exporter of natural gas. There was a pipeline being discussed to be built down from Alaska into the lower 48 states, where now they're just talking about it to end at the port of in the Gulf of Alaska to ship gas overseas, because we think we're going to be self-sufficient. Natural gas was at $14 per million BTU. Now it's at $3, $4. But then again, nothing stays static. So who knows what could happen in the future. But as Frank said, and I agree with Frank, that this is an opportunity for us to promote our technology as being the most efficient way of using natural gas, and promote that to the public at large.
One small thing, I think yesterday's panel, plenary session on natural gas and how it fits with fuel cells is a great example of how our industry is coming together with the natural gas industry in figuring out the best ways for us to work together. You know, we had representatives from American Gas Association working with the auto industry, and then we also had a utility. So I think that we're making headway, we're building great relationships, and we have opportunities that we are taking advantage of.
I agree with your assessments. I was wondering more from a policy point of view of the administration. Will they stay with their all of the above, and will we be able to make use of that? I was thinking along that line. I really do believe it is a game changer that could help our industry. I'm just wondering your professional opinions on whether the administration is going to buy into it.
You know, I think the administration does sincerely believe in its all above strategy, and we'll stick to it. They have recognized that our economic well-being is still tied to energy costs, and I think they understand completely that both business and consumers have to be able to afford the enormous amount of energy that we consume here in the United States, and that this has been an unexpected bounty that's been given to us with this technology over the past 2-3 years. And I think they're fairly comfortable with it. Both, as I said earlier, both Secretary Chu and other people in the administration have really sincerely focused on how we can take advantage of this newfound energy. So I do believe it's a sincere approach that you'll see followed up with over the next several years. The beauty of it also is, though, it's very difficult for the Republican side to object to it, because it's something that I think both sides could really get together on, because they have both promoted something that is a domestic source that is much cleaner than the source that it's replacing, and it provides us with both, let's not forget, the national security aspects of it, and also our national wealth, that we're not going, if we use this source, we're not exporting the money that we've been spending for others. So I think they're actually sincerely enthusiastic about it.
Jerry, just one sort of follow-on to that. Just from the sheer number of invitations and meetings that members of our industry association have had with the administration at FERC commissioner level, the campaign policymakers for the Obama campaign and Romney, just if you use that metric of the number of people who are more willing to listen to our industry over the past several months, you clearly have a sense that they're willing to pay attention. The challenge for us is how do we convert that attention to specific items that advance the industry. That's the second part of the equation that we as an industry have got to turn around when they ask, well, we've heard you, it makes a lot of sense, we know you're part of the future, tell us the specific things that can be done in the context of job growth and budget constraints. That's where we're going to be challenged to come up with some things that are tangible.
It's kind of interesting, too, with natural gas, and particularly on the end use of natural gas. While everyone is talking about how wonderful natural gas is and how great it is and how helpful it's going to be and how we are going to have such an influx in it, the administration has not been funding a lot of end-use natural gas research and development for a while. There's been a little work here and there in ERE, maybe some more over on the fossil energy side. But so it's interesting to see how that's going to grow, right, and how we as an industry can fit in that's growth as well. So it's not as if they've had this big flux of money coming in and we're going to try and fit into it. We have an opportunity to work with them to figure out ways in which new technologies and end use of natural gas can be a policy and a funding priority. And I think they've shown us that they're willing to have those discussions with us.
You know, I was just going to add one thing, because I know we're coming to the end of the session.
Last comment.
You know, okay, and this is a good one, I hope. We all here, right around here, we believe in what you're all doing. We really, really do. And we need to ask you to believe in what we're doing and trying to help promote this industry and turn it into a profitable, sustainable industry. And we need your help. We cannot just do it on ourselves. You have volunteers here who are spending a lot of time trying to promote our industry with policymakers. And they're the ones who are really driving the debate. But we need your help. We need you to participate in the association. We need you, if you are part of the association, participate in the events we're having. We are meeting with the decision makers. As Frank mentioned earlier, we met with the chairman of the Federal Energy Resource Commission. We've met with OMB. We're meeting with people, but they want to hear from you, not us. To each policymaker, you see that map behind me? I'm looking at the one in front, but the one behind us, that represents a member of Congress, that represents a governor, that represents a senator. They want to hear from you, not from the people who live inside the Beltway in the suburbs of Washington. They want to hear from you, and we need your help. We believe in you. We need you to help us help you.
So So please join me in thanking our panel here, Maury, Aaron, and Frank. At this point this morning, I'd like to introduce Pat Valente to come up here and talk about Ohio and the Fuel Cell Seminar. Pat is the Executive Director of the Ohio Fuel Cell Coalition.
Please welcome the Executive Director of the Ohio Fuel Cell Corridor, Pat Valente.
It's always a surprise on the songs. Well, good morning, everyone. Oh, we do have slides up here. Well, the coalition, it's a surprise to some of you, not a surprise to many others. We're very pleased to announce that the 2013 Fuel Cell Seminar and Exposition will be held in Columbus, Ohio, October 21st to 24th, and hope to see all of you there. Needless to say, we are very pleased to be able to host this premier fuel cell event. And I want to first thank the Board of Directors and the Advisory Committee of the Fuel Cell Seminar and Energy Exposition for choosing Ohio. Thank you very much. I also want to thank Mike McKay and Lynn Morgan for being great partners to the coalition. They were instrumental in helping move this forward. And finally, I want to thank the Board of Directors of the coalition and to all of its members, too, because without you, we wouldn't be here today. So let's talk about the coalition. Many of you maybe not have heard of the Fuel Cell Coalition. We are the largest fuel cell association in the nation. We have 80 members. They run the gamut from industry to academic to nonprofit sectors, and we believe that we offer the industry unmatched opportunities for growth. So why fuel cells in Ohio? Let me give you a little bit of a background. The state of Ohio, about 10 years, recognized the fit of fuel cells with our manufacturing base. And Ohio has a gross state product in manufacturing approaching about 18%. So the state had the vision to plant the seeds to allow the industry to grow and to flourish. So let's talk a little bit about that. There was a program that Governor Tapp put together called the Ohio Third Frontier Program. It was an over $1 billion technology economic development program. And within that program, and it had a set aside for fuel cells, $90 million has been invested through grants to industry and research and development entities. Those dollars have been matched by federal money to the tune of $300 million or more. But that's just the beginning. So again, why fuel cells in Ohio? Well, number one, we got a broad network of supply chain participants. We feel that there is not a fuel cell manufacturer in the United States that does not have an Ohio component. I was at an event not too long ago, and I'll leave the company nameless, but they came up to me and says, "You have the best supply chain in the world based upon cost and quality." And I certainly believe that. The supply chain in Ohio is really a legacy of the automotive and aerospace industry. And it's very large and very much involved in fuel cells. So the next step is the integrators. We have about 8 integrators in the state of Ohio. So you mix that with the supply chain. And then next is the community colleges, world-class workforce training, and a strong relationship with private entities. And finally, university and federal labs solving problems and developing breakthrough technologies. So you include all this together and you really get a robust industry. So Ohio is certainly a center for fuel cell innovation. Major companies, again, emerging small businesses, universities, community college, and research institutions. And one of the reasons we were chosen twice in the last 5 years as one of the top 5 states in the country. And this base has allowed companies to choose Ohio to expand and grow. Now what I'm going to do is break this out into 3 areas. Now let's talk about integrators. LG Fuel Cell Systems, formerly Rolls-Royce Fuel Cell Systems, chose to locate its worldwide fuel cell business or headquarters in North Canton, Ohio. This is the evidence of the third frontier again, coming back and and showing not only LG but Rolls-Royce too that really Ohio is the place to be. Crown Equipment in New Bremen, Ohio, a leading forklift manufacturer. By the end of the year, there will be 1,500 plug-powered Crown forklifts in the market. Pretty phenomenal. So now let's talk about three other integrators, Lockheed Martin, Energy Technologies, and Battelle, all in a similar space, and that space is gensets for the military. There's 100,000 gensets currently. Every year, 15,000 of them are replaced. Right now, the U.S. ships JP-8 fuel from the United States to wherever in the world to different theaters, $40 to $400 a gallon. This will cut that cost in half. So we have Lockheed Martin working with the fuel cell company, solid oxide, TMI. Again, we have another company, Energy Technologies from Mansfield, in the same arena. And then Battelle, marketing a fuel cell multi-purpose electric power system using any JP-8 fuel. So this is an example of three separate integrators working in that same space. And that's just the beginning. Talk about a little bit about the supply chain, and this is going to be brief. American Trim, which I consider to be a sophisticated metal forming company in Lima, Ohio, has contracts to produce bipolar plates, PEM fuel cells, and establish critical supplier relationships with many automotive companies. So we're getting ready for that eventual in the market. Catacell in Garrettsville, Ohio, supplies catalytic reactors and advanced heat exchangers to Bloom Energy, Ballard, and many other companies. So what we're doing here is you're seeing the integrators, the supply chain, and then you'll see the universities and the colleges. Next Tech Materials, which is in a suburb of Columbus, is a very innovative solid oxide fuel cell company, including ceramic materials and hydrogen sensors. And it's interesting, the dialogue that we were having before on natural gas. One of the strengths of Ohio is solid oxide fuel cells, and they run on natural gas, or they could. Another role, Central Ohio. CSA Standards, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but their U.S. headquarters is in a suburb of Cleveland, Independence, Ohio, and they are the leading fuel cell standard organization in the United States. Almost as big as Underwriters Laboratory. They're a large organization. They have operations all over the United States and Canada, headquarters in Ohio. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton supports the development and evaluation of fuel cell systems for military and mobile power apps. And there's a connection to the gensets too. DJW Technologies in Dublin, Ohio is developing technology to remove sulfur from military logistics fuels for fuel cell systems under the purview of the Office of Naval Research. Let's talk about university and college innovation. Ohio State University is working with American Trim for high-velocity metal forming, a process that lowers the cost and increases the efficiency of the production of bipolar plates. Ohio State University also, with DJW Technologies, developing membrane functions. And these have all been good relationships. The IP has not been an issue, and it certainly helps move the industry forward. And finally, we have Stark State and LG Fuel Cell Systems developing training for LG. And in conjunction, they're on the same campus together. And I mentioned earlier this relationship between the colleges and the private companies, and that's another example of that. So I'm summing all of this together. The dollars from the state, the integrators, the supply chain, the colleges and the universities and other entities really makes Ohio what it is today. So hopefully I'll see everyone next year, October 21st to 24th, in Columbus, Ohio, and we'll show you even more what's going on in the industry. Thank you.
So thanks, Pat, for that introduction to next year's site for the Fuel Cell Seminar in Columbus, Ohio. I'd just like to wrap up this morning's session with a few quick announcements. We'll have a break starting just a few minutes here, right at 10:30, which is right about now, behind us in the corridor. The session tracks will start up at 11 a.m. and we'll go through 12:30 this morning, followed by another lunch in this venue, which will also serve as an awards ceremony today during the lunch as well. And then we have the afternoon tracks to close out this year's event. So thank you very much for attending. the Fuel Cell Seminar, 2012 Fuel Cell Seminar in Connecticut, and I look forward to seeing you at the 2013 seminar in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you and have a good day.
Ladies and gentlemen, please proceed to your right for this morning's coffee break in the exhibit hall.